Today I am taking a look at something a little different. This is a 2024 Aston Martin DB12 Volante. And you know what? Let's just get right into it. So at a glance, this DB12, just kind of looks like a refresh of the DB11, which isn't a bad thing because that was a pretty good looking car. And the tweaks to this are pretty subtle, at least on the exterior, but under the skin, there's a lot more going on. So much so that Aston decided that this should be a new car altogether. The marketing peeps at Aston Martin have decided to brand this as the world's first super tourer, which I'm not nuts about. I really much prefer the modesty they used to have, the kind of smug modesty they used to have back in the era of the first V8 Vantage in the late 70s, when they would say horsepower, adequate, top speed, adequate, 0 to 60, adequate, and it was the fastest car in the world. Like, I thought that was super badass. But that's not what they're doing here. They're pretty proud of the performance they've achieved from this thing, and I don't blame them because this thing is really good. Like, really good. They've made a pretty big change that a lot of people are going to complain about, that I thought I was going to complain about, and that is the fact that they've gotten rid of the V12. It's gone, at least for the time being. There's rumors it's coming back for some of the higher end Superleggera models, but for the time being, we just have the 4-liter AMG V8 in this car. So that V8 has been to the gym, and now it can bench more than the V12 it replaces. In this car, it's putting out 671 horsepower, and this Aston is still rear-wheel drive. So that is a lot of power to put through two wheels. So when I first got in this car and found some open road and put my foot down, I noticed the rear end was starting to wiggle a little bit. Subtly, like it went, but there was the sense of like, oh, there's a lot of forces we're competing with here. Don't get me wrong, the car hooks up well and it goes quick. But there was definitely the sense of several waitstaff at a high-end restaurant trying to delicately control a belligerent guest and just whisk him out the door. It felt kind of like that. The car just wants to be such a brute, and there's like a really smart system of safety nets to keep everything under control without ruining the experience. The transmission is still the 8-speed automatic that it had before. It's excellent. I have no complaints about this gearbox. It's pretty well perfect. But this thing goes well beyond just being a brute of an engine. They've stiffened the structure, they've tweaked the suspension a bit, especially on these Volante models. It's softened up just a tiny bit. But that's not to say it feels at all like a boulevard car. This thing is tight, it is composed, it handles very well. balance is terrific. The turn-in is super eager. There's tons of mechanical grip. It's very easy to put power down on an exit. And despite the forces it's contending with, you don't have to be afraid of it. It's got just enough of an edge to it to remind you the caliber of car you're driving, but not enough to scare you. It's an Aston Martin. It's supposed to feel mighty. It's supposed to feel a little intimidating, but just a little. Your throttle response is excellent. Your transmission response is great. Turbo lag is borderline non-existent. The steering is quick, like surprisingly quick. And not great with feedback, but not bad either in a modern context. It's sharp, it's quick, it's easy to place the car confidently, and it does give you a decent amount of feedback through these huge wheels and tires. Aston Martins of the past weren't always terribly precise instruments. They were very kind of power first, and this car is still power first because there's so much of it, but they've really got the chassis on this thing finely honed. It handles terrific, it's fun to drive, it's satisfying. And it's definitely way too quick for the street, but they've got it set up in such a way that it's still pretty enjoyable to play with. Aston Martins have always been nice to drive, easy to drive. They're fast, they're comfy, and effortless. They've always gone for world-class performance, and they've really sharpened it up here. This car drives incredibly well. This is a pretty nice way to get around, despite the squeaky brakes. So, in the same fashion as classic Aston Martins, this is a car that's easy to drive and rewarding to drive fast. You could feasibly, tangibly live with this thing and enjoy it all the time. And while I was coming into this a little skeptically at first, this has definitely been a huge privilege to play with. It just does it all so well in the way that only an Aston Martin could. Overall, what do you say about a car like this? Like, how do you summarize this kind of machine that's operating at this kind of level? This is so far beyond the purview of what we usually do as car reviewers. Most of what we do is evaluating how effective a product is. Whether it has good storage space, whether it's practical, whether it makes sense, whether it's easy to live with, right? Whether it's good value. This is beyond that. This is the other minor portion of the job that means so much more, and that is the celebration of the automobile. It doesn't make sense. This car is $373,000. And that's kind of hard to quantify and put into realistic terms. Is it worth it? I don't know. Right? Once you get over a certain point, it comes down to, well, is it worth it to you? What you're getting here doesn't have the most cargo space or the best fuel economy or the best rear seat room, because there's none. But what you're paying for is beauty, craftsmanship, soul, passion, design. And Aston Martin is supposed to be inspired, a wonderfully crafted machine built by artisans. Like, just look at this thing. Look at the materials. Look at the craftsmanship. Look at the artwork that goes into designing and building a car like this. Like this huge sheet of match grain wood along this door panel. It's all uninterrupted. Same thing with the dash panels. Things like the beautifully knurled wheel controls for the climate control and radio. Polished door handle, the quilted leather stitching. Just the choice of color on this thing, the olive over olive, is absolutely stunning. This is such a striking, gorgeous car. It's not classically pretty so much like Aston's used to be, but it channels a lot of that ethos while bringing it forward into a modern era and showing that this car is fast. It is contemporary fast, one of the quickest cars you can buy. And it delivers that while also being usable. A lot of the touches that Aston has done for this new DB12, like this whole center stack with the new infotainment system, works really well. This is all easy to use. I like that there's a wireless charger now. That's a rarity in this caliber of car. And the soft top on this thing is quick and super thick. It's an 8-layer top. So when you're going down the highway with the top up, you hear more from these huge Michelin Pilot Sport tires than you do wind going over the roof of the car. It's so well insulated. And that's what they tried to deliver. That's what they've always tried to deliver. A car that is first and foremost gorgeous, powerful, comfortable. A classic grand touring car meant to cover great distances with ease and style. I think that's worth celebrating. The fact that they're still doing this, they're still trying this, and doing it this well. For DoubleClutch.ca magazine, I'm Nathan Leipzig. Thanks for watching.
That sounds really good.